Vancouver Centre.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam President, I am so glad that we're having this debate tonight. I think it has long been overdue. You know, I've heard a lot of people speak, and they were all passionate, and they all really cared about what they were saying. But I want to make a statement. COVID did not cause violence against women. It exacerbated it. It exposed it. But violence against women is pervasive. It's rooted in history and in tradition and in culture for millennia. You know, history and culture, women were possessions. They were chattel. It's only within the last a little over 100 years ago that in this country that women actually stopped being chattel. Women had the right to vote. Women began that long march to being treated equally. And I think the idea of toxic masculinity, while it sounds horrible, is very real. And it's real because as women are getting to be more and more equal, as women are moving forward towards equality, we're finding that some men who are still rooted in that history, tradition, culture, don't like it. Especially as women begin to make decisions or in influential places like MPs and judges, and these are the women that are being focused in. And I think so we need to think about that and recognize it. And it's also violence against women is intergenerational. We know that 43% of boys who grow up in an abusive home become abusers themselves. 35% of girls who grow up in an abusive home marry or live or find a partner that is also abusive. And so I think we need to talk about the fact that this is a reaction. What we're seeing today is an absolute reaction by toxic masculinity against the move of women forward. Now, I think when we look at violence against women, we get all upset and we react when women are raped or murdered. But you know what? That's not the only form of violence against women. Women have psychological violence every day. They're being threatened. Social media has increased the ability for people to speak out against women. Social media has been threatening to women. Women can be anonymously threatened on social media. And the threats are part of a violence. It don't even have to happen. But the fact that they're being threatened, that language is being used to demean women, to make women less valuable, to make women feel badly about themselves.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just can't remember if the honourable member has mentioned that she was splitting her time.
No, I didn't.
I'm sorry. I meant to.
I'm sorry. I would like to say that I'm sharing my time with the honourable member from Vancouver East, who is a champion for the cause of gender equality as well. So I'm pleased to share the time with her. But I wanted to say that we don't talk. The psychology is what starts it all. When you're sitting around a boardroom table and your male colleagues and you say something and they pretend you didn't speak, or they put it down, or they make it sound silly. When you talk to women and you threaten that you're going to rape them or kill their children or do all of those things, it doesn't actually have to come to pass, but it is part of that act of putting women back into their places, of demeaning them and threatening them. And we see it everywhere. We see it specifically in language. We talked about pornography. We talked about social media. We talked about language that shames women and makes them feel less than they are, and that devalues everything that they do. So I said it happens at work, and it happens at home. When carelessly we say something to our daughter, or we say something to a female partner, and it's putting down something that she just said, that again gives a strong message. We see it in film, we hear it in jokes. And what is more important, we see it in parliaments around the world. And I want to point to Ocasio-Cortez in the United States, where she was berated and shamed and vile language used against her by her members in her own Congress. I think this is the kind of thing that we need to talk about. We need to talk about all those root causes, and then we need to talk about intersectionality. Women are not one large group of people. people. Women find that women who are visible minority women, women who are LGBTQ plus, indigenous persons, they are all women with mental illness and who are disabled. They are all put down and demeaned and have that kind of violence, whether it's physical or verbal or in other ways. And so I wanted to quickly touch on what do we do about it? We have shelters. We say, and right now my government is responding to the emergency of it all. We're putting millions of dollars into shelters and helping women to get food and helping them to find stability and to be safe. And that's all good. But that's a Band-Aid as far as I'm concerned. We need to deal with the root causes. We need to change the institutions, the police, the judiciary, parliaments, all of these institutions that continue to foster systemic violence against women in the way they behave and the way they treat them and the way that moves forward. And I want to talk about one institution.
Unfortunately, there's no more time. The member only had 5 minutes, so there's 5 minutes for questions and comments. The honourable member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank the member for her passionate remarks, and it's been a pleasure working with her on the Foreign Affairs Committee. We don't always agree, but it's certainly a pleasure working with her. I think she's quite right to say this problem of violence against women didn't start with the COVID-19 pandemic. It certainly didn't, and there are many different root causes. She also said that the situation has been exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. And I think one of the issues as well is that the kind of isolation that some people experience as a result of the pandemic, people aren't as able to go out and connect with others and maybe share things that they're experiencing. That's much more challenged as a result of the kind of isolation. I wonder if the member could just comment on that social context. How can we think about the particular challenges that result from the isolation that's associated with the COVID-19 pandemic and the requirements that are in place? And how can we try to combat that to ensure that people can access those supports in the midst of an environment where they may not be exposed to community outside of their home in the same way that they might normally be?
The honourable member for Vancouver Centre.
Thank you. I think you can do that by actually providing shelters, places that are safe, safe houses, places where women can go and be free from violence. All women, not just women who suffer domestic violence. So I think that that's the first thing we can do. But as I said before, that's a Band-Aid. We need to now look at how we can deal with it. And I think we need to teach our children to value women, our boys. We need to teach it in schools. We need to work with provinces and create a pan-Canadian plan because provinces are responsible for education. It should be taught in schools, the value of women. So it's, there are so many things we can do. Training our judges. These are the institutions. Training our police. Those are institutions. And training our MPs, because sometimes without knowing it, what we tend to do in the House is a woman speaks and she's got a high voice and she goes, "Oh, excuse me," and everybody titters and laughs at her. This is part of being
Sorry, I do have to allow for more questions. Questions et commentaires. L'honorable député de Saint-Jean.
Questions and comments. The honourable member for Saint-Jean.
Pour son discours passionné, ce qui a été le cas de pas mal tous les discours qu'on a entendus ce soir.
Questions and comments, the honourable member for Saint-Jean. There's something that we haven't really raised as a topic, and that is violence against seniors. And the Bloc Québécois has talked about the situation of seniors in the pandemic. There's also economic violence, and we've shed light on the fact that economic precariousness affects a lot of seniors in the pandemic. Should we be helping seniors, economically speaking, and that might have a direct impact of violence against seniors? The honourable member for Vancouver South.
I fully agree with you. I think when we talk about intersectionality, we want to talk about all of the different types of women who are more susceptible, and seniors are susceptible. And financial violence, if seniors are dependent on their children or on someone that they're sharing their home with, that also disempowers them and treats them with that kind of psychological violence that we talk about, where they're frightened and they have no ability to make decisions on their own or to have any money to go out and buy something for themselves. So that's a huge piece, but we got to talk about that under the intersectionality rubric, the different types of violence that women face based on who they are and the group that they belong to.
Questions and comments. A brief question from the member for Vancouver East.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. To the member, she talked about societal issues and institutional barriers and changes. For sex trade workers, they often actually face some of the most gravest situations, yet our society continue to segregate them and treat them in such a way that puts them even in greater danger. I wonder whether or not the member will support the call for action to decriminalize the sex trade.
A brief answer from the member for Vancouver Centre.
Absolutely. The Supreme Court ruled on it. The three areas that we've got to decriminalize, we've got to just do it. And I speak to sex trade workers very regularly. About 50 of them we talk on Zoom, and they really need to get the kind of help to find safe places to work, safe places to live, and to be protected.